Well, welcome back to the show tonight, everybody. And I'm really excited about our next guest. First of all, I'm honored to have Lance Barrow on the show, coordinating producer for CBS Sports for a long time. We're talking Masters, Super Bowl, the Olympics, you name it. Lance did it. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in our business last December. And I just watched, by the way, Lance, your acceptance speech, because I knew you were coming on today. First of all, welcome. I'm honored to have you on the show. Honored to call you a friend. You look great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm sorry. It's about 30 minutes of your life, Doug. You'll never get back after watching that acceptance speech. I hope you put it on fast. I hope you put it on fast forward. But I'm doing great. It's an honor to be with you. I always love when I listen to the radio calls on golf, and they always go, and let's go to Doug Bell. And I just love it.
Well, and you've been a part of my career too, because without your help, I wouldn't be doing stuff for CBS, as far as the digital stuff. And obviously everything's evolving in the digital world. So that was a great move for me. And I have always been very thankful of that. And your friendship, whenever I see you at Colonial or at golf tournaments, number one, you're always buzzing around in a golf cart because you know the shortcuts everywhere, but you always stop to say hi. And I've always appreciated that.
Well, my mom always had a great line. It doesn't take a lot of effort to be nice to people.
Well, she was a smart lady, that's for sure. Lance, tell me, as we near the Masters, and of course you were involved in so many of those incredible moments with Frank Chircania in 1986. Most people consider that the greatest Masters ever, and that's a debate that can rage on. Obviously, Tiger's first win in 97, his last win in 2019. I mean, you got to get excited when we get close to traveling to Augusta, Georgia.
Yeah, I kind of think about one of our ministers at our church in Fort Worth, Texas, the Hills Church. Rick Ashley says, other than Easter Sunday, the Masters final round Sunday is the second most holiest day of the year. And I know he does that in kind of tongue in cheek. He just said it the other day at church, but it is such a special place, and is such a special, obviously tournament in the history and the tradition. It's kind of, as everybody says, it's the start of spring. All of a sudden, I always used to equate it to when Dorothy landed in Munchkinland and she opened the door and she had come from black and white and now everything's color. That's what I think about when you think about the Masters, and it's a beginning of a new time of our year, the great tournament, the great place, and all the great tradition. I mean, it's a privilege to be able to say I've even been there, much less to be involved with it as long as I have.
I again watched your Hall of Fame speech, which was terrific, and the people that you know and you've been associated with are incredible. But the lead in, and Jim Nantz narrated it, and there was that footage of you inside the truck when Tiger won in 2019, and you were telling everybody, be quiet, let the pictures tell the story, as he went and hugged Charlie, and it was a phenomenal moment. I mean, when you look back at that, Lance, number one, how lucky are you to have been there for that moment? But to capture it the way you did, you have to be just so proud of that moment. And it's got to be one of those that's just, it's still special.
Yeah, you always think about it. You don't realize it because, as you know, when you're on the air and when you're doing your thing, you don't think about, okay, what is this going to mean down the line or even that moment. What I thought about when I saw that night, that, when you think back, you think about, we always talked about how we are able to capture the moment when it comes time. That's what we trained to be. That's what we set out to be. When you get to that position, whatever position you're in on our crew, when we get the moments like Tiger winning that tournament, walking off, hugging Charlie, hugging his daughter, his mom, and seeing all of that went on with it, you kind of, not to sound cocky, but it's like, wait a minute, that's what we trained to do. That's right. What we expect to do. But then when you think about it, you go, thank you, God, for giving me the blessing to be able to do that. You know, it's it was just pure teamwork from Jim Nance to Sir Nick Faldo to everyone in our truck to all our technicians, uh, everyone involved. It was just it's what teamwork was all about, and it all came together at the perfect moment when he won. You know, people ask me, "Wow, how did you get Tiger hugging his dad?" You know, in 1997. And I said, since the day he hugged his father after the Masters tournament, I said it was like since the day Tom Brady hurt his knee back many years ago in the Patriots game, we had that hug on our reel probably every tournament from 1997 until that moment. And I said, just like we would joke that, hey, we better have Tom Brady's injury when we did football. And because, you never know when you need it, that was a moment that we needed it.
Well, it's amazing to me. It's not amazing, but the Masters is the highest rated golf tournament year in and year out. It has been forever. I mean, and I guess my question is, Lance, I know the reason, but I mean, we're talking demographics, young, old, male, female. It crosses all cultural lines. I mean, there's something about the Masters, and no other golf tournament will ever duplicate it or match those ratings. Can you explain why?
I can't explain right. I'm not smart enough to explain right why, but I think this. I think one, it's been on the same golf course forever. I think people, they might not have ever walked on those grounds, but they know every hole front to back. They know the history of it. As a young man, I watched that tournament with my dad and my mom, and they weren't really golf fans. I have two daughters now. I've done the Masters while they were growing up, and they've been to the Masters, but they know, and they know the tradition of it. And I also think it's the certain time of the year because you turn on the TV, everything's green, it's beyond beautiful. Like I've had people come and tell me over the years, boy, it was something to be there. I can't believe I was ever there. And they said, but there's two things that you guys don't do well on TV to show the Masters is really how hilly it is and how really truly beautiful it is. And I think, people come there just to look at the flowers. They might not really, they're golf fans, but they're there to really look around and see all the flowers that are on the golf course. And I think it's part of it is just people grow up watching it with their mom and dad, and their sons and daughters grow up, and then they get their family and they grow up watching it. They know when it is. It's the same place. It's the same tradition. And, Doug, you've been there a lot too. Back in the day, can you believe that, back in the day, you could go out and watch Byron Nelson, Sam Snead, and Gene Saracen hit a golf shot. And now you see Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer and Gary Player in the day. And now Tom Watson and Jack and Gary. And, it's just stuff that you wait for and you can't wait. And, I was at lunch yesterday at Colonial Country Club in Fort Worth, and a guy looked at me. And I just met him, and he's a golfer, and he works for a golf company, and he said, "I'm getting to go to the Masters for the first time."
Wow.
He said, "I cannot wait." He says, "What do you suggest?" And I said, "Go walk every hole." He goes, "Well, I'll plan on doing that." I said, "And just sit there and just amaze by what you're looking at."
Yeah, I mean, well said. I get excited with you as you describe it, and I've been there a zillion times, and you're right. The elevation change, when I take people there for the first time, they want to go to Amen Corner. And I said, all right. And so it's downhill to Amen Corner, and then as we walk back up the hill, they're like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. I said, I tried to tell you, the elevation change here is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing, and it is, it's just something. I've been fortunate in my career to do the biggest events on
Yes.
TV,
Yes.
in basically all categories, from sitting next to Pat Summerall all the way up to being the coordinating producer of NFL and golf, and then other sports that we've done at CBS. But, you know, no matter where you go in the world, Doug, people will say, "What do you do for a living?" "I work for CBS." "Oh, CBS Sports." "Oh, okay. Well, you guys do this event, that event." And then you can almost tell it clicks. "But you guys do the Masters, don't you? And
Right.
have you ever been there?" And then, and then they want to hear about it, and they want to hear about everything that that's there is about it, and it's amazing.
Well, it is amazing. And you were lucky enough to obviously start your career with Pat Summerall. And obviously, Jim Nantz trying to make it to 50 years. I have no doubt he will in 2036. But I mean, Lance, to think, and I've met both gentlemen, spent time with them, interviewed them. Obviously, you know them personally. Uh, very unique, very honest, original men. To think that you worked with Pat and Jim, oh my goodness, on golf and football, Lance, incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes, I joke sometimes. Somebody will ask me something or ask me to tell a story about something, and I'll tell this story about Pat, or I'll tell the story about Jim, or I'll tell the story about Dick Enberg or Dan Dierdorf or Brent Musburger or John Madden. And after I tell the story, I even say to myself, "There's no way anybody believes that happened, that I was there, that I crisscrossed the country on buses with John Madden, many, many times." Or, I remember Chuck Will, who was Frank Shakinian's right-hand guy and probably his best friend, who traveled around the country helping on golf, who was a great golfer in his own right, played in the British and U.S. amateur back in the day. He, when I walked out to Colonial when I was after my junior year of college at Abilene Christian, and asked Chuck if I could work for him, he never looked at me on that Monday morning. He just said, "Come back Thursday and I'll give you something to do." And I walked in and he said, "The guy who works for Pat's not going to be here, and I'm going to put you on the 18th tower." And he said, "The reason I'm doing it, the wind blows hard here in Fort Worth. You'll keep the 18th tower from blowing away because you're a big guy. And you play football, and Pat played football, and you guys hopefully will get along." And on the way out the door, I'll never forget it, because our office is still there on Mockingbird Lane at Colonial, right?
Yes.
Golfers right at 15. He said, "And also, young man, you're not going to meet a man like Pat Summerall in this business very often." And that was 1976. And he pretty much has hit it on the head, because Pat Summerall never made me ever feel like I worked for him. He made me feel like a son. He made me feel like I was very important to the process. And he taught me a lot, directly and indirectly, on how to treat people, how to handle people. And I would say the same thing about what Jim Nantz is like.
Mm.
All the greats have that something, but what they really do is how they treat people. And I think Tom Watson said this years ago. Somebody asked him about Byron Nelson being one of the greatest golfers ever, and he said, "Well, you can debate all you want about who is the greatest golfer who played professional golf, but there's no debating who was the greatest gentleman that played professional golf, and that was Byron Nelson." And I
Wow.
think I could say the same about Pat and Jim Nantz. And I feel fortunate not only to have a professional relationship, but more importantly to me, as a father figure to me, Pat Summerall, and as a brother figure to me and Jim Nantz.
Wow. Well said. Well said. I was watching the game the other night, and of course, Jim no longer does basketball, although he's on the commercials. It seems like he's still there, and they're great commercials. But to see him in the stands with his son, wearing the
Yeah.
Houston Cougar sweatshirt, and anguishing over missed shots and going to overtime. And I thought, wow, how cool is that? I've never seen that before, where an announcer retires and he goes back to support his old school. I thought that was unbelievable.
Well, I called him the next morning, and we always joke because one of the privileges I had, my college roommate, Abilene Christian, David Woods, who was our football manager, he moved down by Houston to work for a company when he got out of school, and he and his wife, Anita, became very close to Coach Williams, the legendary golf coach at the University of Houston, and his wife. They went to church together. And so I got to know Coach Williams through my roommate, but then we would sit, we just seemed like we would have football games in Houston when the Ryder Cup was going on. And I remember going over to Jim's mom and dad's house with Coach Williams and Billy Ray Brown and Elkington,
Wow.
Steve Elkington and those guys. And we'd watch, Friday morning, the Ryder Cup. And I said to him when he picked the phone up on me on Monday morning, I said, "Okay, Jimmy, I saw you with that Cougar Red on last night," because that's what Coach Williams would always say. "I love you. You're looking good in that Cougar Red." And he said, "Man, what a night!" And he has a family obligation Friday, so he's not going to be able to get to the Duke Houston game here in Dallas. But he said if they win Friday night, he'll definitely be there Sunday in Dallas watching them. He says, he obviously, there's a lot been said about his relationship with Freddie Couples and Blaine McAllister and John Horn. They were sweet mates at Houston with Paul Merchant, who's the great teaching pro. But really, and he told me this the other day, he says, "You're one of the few people who really know this, my true love affair with our basketball program at the University of Houston."
Yeah. Because Guy Lewis was a great coach that never got the big one, and they had it in their grasp if not for that crazy NC State game.
I always blame it on
he was a big part of that team.
Yeah,
the PA
I always
announcer
blame
for
it
that.
on Terry Gannon. I always blame that on Terry Gannon because he was dying for the ball, and they made the long shot, and that's why they should have passed it to Terry.
Another name that you brought up in your acceptance speech, and Terry and I go way back too. So again, you said for 30 minutes I'll never get back, but Lance, I thoroughly enjoyed it because every person you mentioned, every single person I've either interviewed or been lucky enough to shake their hand and just rub elbows with. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, your career is amazing.
You're kind. It was. I don't really have a problem speaking in front of people. I do that a lot. But ever since Ken Agar, who started the Hall of Fame, who was actually head of our operations at CBS for years, and Sean McManus, obviously our chairman at CBS, two men who had a big influence on my career. When they called me in the middle of the summer to tell me I was going into the Hall of Fame, which I had never thought about it. I thought that was for other people. That wasn't for me. That wasn't something that I was going to get to do. And I really struggled with what I was going to say because I think when you get an opportunity and an honor like that, you don't need to talk about your career. People know that. What I wanted to do is make sure I thank the people that helped me get up on that stage. And there was a lot of people, and I could have kept saying, thank you. I was with two dear friends of mine who came up for the Hall of Fame dinner. Jeffrey Strauss, who owns a great restaurant out in San Diego called Pamplemousse, and his brother Bill Strauss, who started Pro Flowers, who had the great racehorse Hot Rod Charlie a couple years ago. And we were having lunch that day before the Hall of Fame dinner, and one of them looked at me and said, "I've never seen you this way. You're nervous, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, because I want to make sure I thank the people who gave me this opportunity and helped me get this honor. Because you don't go into a Hall of Fame on your own. There was a lot of people who helped me. And I was blessed that night to be able to go in to a Hall of Fame with dear friends like Andrea Joyce and Ernie Johnson and Tony Petiti and people like that, and then the Chris Collinsworth and Val Ackelman and other people who made our industry great. And that was another thrill that I wanted to make sure I honored all of them.
Well, you did. And you've had an amazing life, amazing career, and I appreciate the time, Lance. I really do. And I appreciate your friendship. And I look forward to seeing you at Colonial because I'll be walking and you'll be buzzing by me in a golf cart.
Well, I hope now it's not always guaranteed I get a golf cart because I'm a has been a deal, but I think I'll be okay at Colonial. I'll pick you up anytime, but you're working, and
Yes.
the problem is I would be walking too, but I just don't want to do that. Why would I want to do that when I can have a golf cart? And I'm looking forward to having you guys on radio and all the things that you guys do, which I think it's amazing what that team on Sirius Radio does to bring golf to life on radio.